Hello, today we're going to be talking about the endocrine system. This is a very important system that is made up of glands, which are really important in transporting the hormones that are produced in the endocrine system. So the functions of the endocrine system is to achieve and maintain homeostasis. It's going to send hormone molecules through the blood. It's organized for a slower but more prolonged response. And this is because it's responsible for detecting fluctuations in hundreds of critical chemicals and its variations. So when it does detect something, it's going to then release a hormone that's going to then activate a target cell, but it is going to be more prolonged response. So you can see here we're going to be talking about tons of glands and their functions. A gland is an organ that is specialized for secreting substances needed by the organisms. And again, it's going to be transported through the bloodstream. There are two main types of glands. They can be exocrine glands or they can be endocrine glands. Now, an exocrine gland is going to produce sweat, mucus, and digestive enzymes. And it's going to convey their signals to the locations it needs to get to by ducts. In reverse, the endocrine gland is ductless gland because they do not have glands. They're going to just produce hormones and secrete these chemicals directly into the bloodstream for distribution into the body. So again, endocrine glands do not have any ducts. And you can see there the different glands within a male and a female. All right, hormones are the chemical signal that we've been talking about. And these are transmitted throughout the body through the blood. Okay? It's a means of communication between cells, body parts, and even individuals. A hormone can reach all parts of the body. However, there are specific cells or target cells that the hormones are going to connect with. The cells actually have a receptor on their membrane that's going to lock in with the hormone, like a lock and key function. We do have about 50 known hormones in the body, and there's more than a dozen tissues and organs that secrete the hormones. A tropic hormone is a hormone that has other endocrine glands as their targets, so they don't really go to different cells. It's going to go to a different gland. And we'll see that as we talk about the different glands. There are three general classes of hormones: steroid hormones, amino acid hormones, and peptide hormones. Steroid hormones are pretty much produced by the adrenal cortex and the sex organs, which are the ovaries and the testes. These are fat-soluble molecules that the body's going to make from cholesterol. They don't bind to the cell membrane like I had just explained. Instead, they enter the cell. Now, they can enter the cell because they are lipids, right? And then once they're inside, they do bind internally to receptors that are in the nucleus or the cytoplasm. These are a little bit more slower as far as the action goes, but the action will last longer. Amino acid hormones obviously are derived from amino acids, and these are examples of epinephrine and adrenaline. And then we have peptide, which are the most diverse, and these are chains of amino acids, and an example of that would be insulin. You could just see here the different types of hormones, the different classes. They do add an additional one for a protein hormone, and that's just a bunch of different amino acids that are longer in chains. So we're going to now focus in on all the different organs that make up the endocrine system. And we're going to talk about the different hormones that it gets released and also the function. So the hypothalamus is our first one. This is a pretty important organ that is found in the brain, and that's going to help regulate the internal environment of our body. The pituitary gland is kind of called the master gland because it controls all the activities of so many endocrine elements. It's a pretty small gland, which is made up of two parts that is going to be connected to the hypothalamus. It actually works in connection with the hypothalamus. Okay, now the two parts are called the anterior and the posterior. So we have an anterior pituitary gland and a posterior gland. Now there's a bunch of different hormones that I have listed. The majority of them are going to be released by the anterior portion. So the growth hormone is going to regulate growth and development. It's going to stimulate growth of pretty much anything. In particular, though, it's going to target our bones and our muscles. The thyroid stimulating hormone is going to activate our thyroid, and that is going to activate that thyroid so it can produce the thyroid hormones, which are thyroxine and trioxydoxyroxine. The adrenocorticotropic hormone is going to stimulate the adrenal glands, and that's going to help produce cortisol. The follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, is involved with estrogen secretion and the growth of our egg cells in women. It also can help with making sperm for men. The luteinizing hormone is involved in the production of estrogen in women, and again, testosterone in men. Prolactin is going to help women who are breastfeeding, and that's going to help them produce milk. Endorphins are kind of pain relieving, and that also is connected to like our pleasure centers of the brain. The enkephalins is going to be related to the endorphins and helping with the pain relieving effects. The beta melanocyte stimulating hormone helps to stimulate pigmentation of our skin in response to the UV rays. Now, there are two different hormones that the posterior lobe secretes, and that's going to be the vasopressin, or the ADH, the antidiuretic hormone, and that's going to help our body conserve water and prevent dehydration. And oxytocin is going to be helping in stimulating the release of breast milk and also in the contractions of a woman who is going through labor. And you can see here that there are various different hormones that are released by the pituitary gland. Again, it's connected to the hypothalamus. They kind of go in connection with each other, and you can just see all of the different hormones that I explained. So the thyroid gland is attached to the trachea, just below the larynx. It's pretty small. It is composed of a large number of follicles, and it's going to release those two thyroid hormones. The main thing that they're going to do is increase metabolism. It's going to stimulate all the cells of our body to metabolize things. And it's also going to release calcitonin, which is going to help lower the blood calcium levels. And you can see there where it is located. And again, it's a pretty small gland, just about 20 grams. The parathyroid glands are embedded in the posterior surface of the thyroid, and they're 4 tiny glands. They are going to produce the parathyroid hormones, which are going to cause the blood calcium to increase and the blood phosphate levels to decrease. It's going to promote activity of the osteoclast, which release calcium from bones. It's going to promote the activity and reabsorption of the calcium via the kidney. And it's also going to bring about the activation of vitamin D in the kidney. And you can see there where they're located on the posterior surface of the thyroid. The adrenal glands are found on top of the kidney. And they're a small organ too. They're about 5 grams. They're broken down into the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. Now, stress is going to prompt the hypothalamus to stimulate this adrenal gland. All right, and this is where our fight or flight mechanism is, okay? So the adrenal medulla is going to secrete pretty much epinephrine and norepinephrine. Now, this is going to help in raising the blood sugar, and that's going to cause the breakdown of the glycogen by the liver. It's going to jolt the body into the readiness to escape or to confront an emergency. It's going to increase metabolism, increase the heart rate. Epinephrine has the adrenaline, and norepinephrine does not have adrenaline. Now, the adrenal cortex is involved in regulating salt and water balance, secreting small amounts of sex hormones, raising the blood glucose levels, promoting catabolism of the fatty acids, breaking down the muscle protein into amino acids so we can convert them into glucose. And you can see here that there's 4 main hormones. The glucocorticoids is going to help raise the blood sugar. Cortisol, helping to maintain blood glucose level, and there's a typo, and fueling the brain activity, also helping with inflammation. Mineralocorticoids regulate the concentration of sodium and potassium in the blood, and the aldosterone stimulates the kidney to reabsorb sodium into the blood. And you can see then there that the adrenal glands are located on top of the kidneys. Now, our pancreas is going to be found behind the stomach. It's about 80 grams in mass. And there are 2 types of tissue found in the pancreas. There's an exocrine tissue and an endocrine tissue. The exocrine tissue produces and secretes digestive juices, and the endocrine tissue is pretty much the pancreatic isthmus. These are going to produce and secrete insulin and glucagon. Insulin is going to lower blood glucose, and the glucagon is going to raise the blood glucose. And you can see there where it is. It kind of is a spongy-like material. Our gonads, our sex organs, are the testes and the ovaries. These are both controlled by the hypothalamus and the pituitary glands. The testes are going to secrete the androgens, which is testosterone, which is going to help with the sperm production and the male characteristics. Ovaries is going to produce estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is going to stimulate the uterine lining. It's going to promote development and maintenance of primary and sex characteristics of females. And the progesterone is going to promote uterine lining growth. There's been a lot of talk about the BPA. That is that plastic chemical that we find in water bottles and other plastic materials. This mimics estrogen. So what it does is it acts as if somebody who's exposed to BPA has been given a shot of estrogen. So you can imagine the prolonged effects of us drinking things out of a bottle that has BPA in it. So again, these are the different sex organs, the ovary and the testes. The pineal gland is involved in our daily sleep and wake schedule. It's located in the brain, and it produces melatonin at night. So it helps with the cardiac rhythms. Now, the thymus gland is going to be near the sternum, and it's going to be very important in making the T lymphocytes, or the T cells. And remember, we had different types of T cells, the killer T cells, the helper T cells, and the suppressor T cells. So I know this was a lot of information on hormones and glands. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.